Ho ho ho, and a bottle of rum? That's not right. Save yourself 10% on any of these. You can get your eShop credit from us at switchup.gg. All the info is in the description. Hello Barjan hunters, welcome back to SwitchUp. If you missed it, we actually had part 1 of this video a couple of days ago. I'll pop a link to that in the description if you want to check out more sales if you didn't see it. Because finally the Christmas sales are starting to begin, and that brought things like Hogwarts Legacy. And also, if we haven't banged on about it enough already, our 12 days of SwitchUp starts on Wednesday. We'll be giving away a Nintendo Switch OLED to one of you and a load of Nintendo Switch physicals and digital games. Not to mention there'll be some really nice videos that we can all just chill out and enjoy. What are the best games on sale this weekend? Well, let's find out. First up, I mentioned it the other day, but it's Iron Wings, which is 40% off, taking it down to £8.09, or your regional equivalent. Now, I've got to be honest, I'd never heard of this flight sim before. It's actually an arcadey one, and it comes from Nap's team, the same team that brought us Baldo on the Nintendo Switch. But it was one of their earlier games, and it basically didn't get much attention at the time. But I've been playing through it because it had a sponsored segment in the last video, and I've been enjoying it a lot. It's 40% off at the moment. It has a full storyline that actually makes sense, and it features 2 childhood friends, but during missions you can switch between them and then issue orders to the other one. You can also scout out using a camera and look from the top down perspective as well to help you bomb those ground targets. It's a mixture of fictional and real historical locations and battles, and it keeps it nice and interesting. So the sale for Iron Wings goes on until December the 18th. Consider checking it out.
Ages 10 and up.
Now, Before We Leave is a stupidly low price. It's £3.19. Yes, that's the cheapest it's ever been. That's 80% off. And it's published by Team 17 and developed by Balancing Monkey Games. We did do a little video on this, I believe, when it came out. It's a simulation strategy game, and it's all set on these hexagonal planets. You've got to build up different settlements, and I think the colonizers, or the people that you play as, are called the Peeps, which is awesome. There's different research and technologies that you can gradually move towards, which always gives me Megalomania vibes. And you can also trade between your settlements. To do that, you can use either the sea or you can use space, which is a nice touch. There are 6 different biomes in here. I haven't spent as much time as Glen has in this one, but he enjoyed it, and I think for that price, yeah, you could do a lot worse, couldn't you? Let's be honest. You're looking at about 15 to 20 hours to finish. It's just 700 megabytes, and it is single player only. Now, Windbound is down 85% to just £2.39. I mean, these are like all the Savoy selections, aren't they? But it won't be a Savoy selection today. Oh no, we've got something much better. Windbound was an interesting one because it released in a well, as we say so often, a terrible state. It had some significant crashes and other issues, but it was the gameplay balancing that wasn't right. Now, since launch, they actually reworked and basically rewired a lot of the gameplay elements. They added in a free sailing mode as well, so you can just chill and sail. But you play as a female character moving from island to island, and you're gathering resources to help you improve your gear, but mainly to improve your ship. Well, you can't really call it a ship, can you? It's more of a raft, but it's a modular raft, so you can have a fire on one side of it, and then you can clip on a new sail, and that will improve its ability to move with the wind. Now, it's not perfect, it does have its pacing issues, but it's still a fun game, and it's another one we do have a full review of. The sale for Windbound goes on until December the 17th. It's a 1.3GB download. There is some cosmetic DLC, but honestly, what's the point? From that then to one of my favourite games on the platform. It's Monster Hunter Rise, which is 60% off, which brings it to, I think it might be a new low of £13.99. Now, Glen and I together have fully completed Monster Hunter Rise. We've moved on to the Sunbreak DLC, but we kept getting our ass handed to us. Like we did that thing, that terrible thing you should never do, which is to say, this is much easier than the last game. And especially in Monster Hunter, because it will suddenly kick you right in the face. And this did. We've hit a monster that's just ludicrously powerful. You walk into its arena and it sneezes on you and you find yourself like pasted against the back wall, dead. If you're not familiar with the genre or the series, I guess, you can choose one of, I can't even remember how many different weapons. Someone will have to help me out in the comments, but each one handles very differently. Now at the start I always used to use ranged weaponry, and now I use like dual blades, and it requires a different skill set for each one. As you probably heard, this one does have a big expansion DLC known as Sunbreak, which you can also find on sale. You may even be able to find both games together reduced, and I would say it does feel more complete having both of those. The second part, Sunbreak, gives a new location as well as a ton of new monsters. But if you just want to go for the bog standard one, as I say, £13.99, that's 60% off. But if you want to look for a physical copy, Game are currently selling this for £10.97. So yeah, real tasty little pickup, that one. Now I don't know about you, but there are a lot of these multi-pack editions of games coming onto the eShop now, and a lot of them stink. Like it's like, hey, let's get 3 of these, I don't want to say turds, but let's get 3 of these smelly things, put them together, we'll charge like less than the full price, and we'll sell a ton. And they're like, yeah, no thanks. But this one is full of great games, and it's just, I mean, you have a look. You've got 9 Monkeys of Shaolin, I believe the full name is, which is a really fun game. Ash of Gods, which is a bit like the Banner Saga trilogy with those story elements, and then you've got that tactical turn-based combat. And then you've got Redeemer, which in fairness did launch in a bit of a shocking way, but then they patched it up and it's absolutely fine now. All 3 of those together, wait for it, £1.74. That's just, yeah, it is what it is. 95% off. It's such an easy recommendation. At least 2 of those I've played a lot of, Ash of Gods and Redeemer, and they're really well worth $1.74 on their own. Glen played 9 Monkeys and he enjoyed that a lot. So yeah, that's probably the easiest pickup of the week, honestly. Jumping over to a 90s boomer shooter, if you want to call it that, is Chasm the Rift, which is 60% off, down to 7 squid, or £7.19 actually. When it first released, it was a bit groundbreaking. Take things like Duke Nukem, Doom, they all set certain firsts in the genre, I guess you could say. Now what I didn't realise is that this is actually Ukrainian and was developed in 1997, and it broke ground because it was the first Eastern European boomer shooter to be made. There are a variety of different weapons. They've also included updated versions of some of the older stages. It's just 637 megs. If you're a fan of this genre, you know, things like Rise of the Triad, Duke Nukem, Hexen, all of those, you'll definitely click with this and enjoy it a lot. The sale goes on until December the 27th. Now my pickup for the week is, I like to pick up at least one thing that I've never heard of, and it's Relicta. The only reason I've picked this up is because it floated its way up to the top of Deku deals, and I was like, that looks interesting, and it's £1. Let's give it a bash. Plus, I absolutely loved, you know, do you remember Myst and Ryzen? Those like puzzle games from back in the day. And just looking at the screenshots and being not a very deep character, I thought, yeah, that looks alright. Now this one, I believe, is set around the moon and sees you playing as a physicist stranded on one of their moon bases. The puzzling comes from some weird gravity bending mechanics as well as magnetism, and it gives you some free rein as to kind of how you approach the game in terms of, do you look for every single clue or do you rush towards the exit? I need to play more of it, I'll be honest. I've done about half an hour. I don't feel like I've been robbed, so there is that. And if you're looking for something a little bit different, then yeah, consider Relicta at £1.59. The sale for that one goes on until December the 17th. Beacon Pines is just $10.79, that's 40% off. You may not have even heard of this one. It's an adventure puzzle game that has like a storybook feel to it. It looks absolutely stunning. That story centres around Luca and his mates and has that like old school, almost 80s road movie / adventure feel to it, even though these are like anthropomorphic creatures. Luca fancies himself as a bit of an investigator, and he's looking into the strange goings on in Beacon Pines. Your role in everything is essentially as the reader of the book. It's like the never-ending story, and you guide proceedings using like an interactive branching story tree. It's quite clever. I do like this idea. It's just 1.1 gigs, around about 5 or 6 hours, which is perfect really for this style. And as I say, that the sale goes on until December the 27th.
A place where things don't always go as expected. But it's okay. We can figure this out. together.
Now, Demon Turf, I compared it or likened it to something like Mario 64. It's currently half price, and it was developed by Fabras, or Fabraz, and published by Platonic Friends. But when I first reviewed it, I gave it a very high score, and I'd give it a high score again. I think it does everything so well as far as that adventure platforming. It's fast, it's responsive. I would say that most of you will either say, yeah, that looks really cool, or you'll say, I really don't like that art style, and that will be your deciding factor. It has a hub world, and then you move between the smaller ones. There's loads to go back for as you progress, and the soundtrack is spot on. I actually bought the vinyl soundtrack of this one. The sale for this goes on until December the 11th, so you haven't got a great deal of time. Finally, before we get to the Christmas pudding selection, we've got Layers of Fear Legacy at 85% off. I am not normally a horror fan, but I'd say this is more of a thriller. It's set in a mansion, and you play as an artist that's basically losing his mind, and you're trying to recreate a painting he's working on. But as you do it, you kind of fill out the different sections. You're sent off into different parts of the mansion, and it all goes a bit awry. Now, if you're not a fan of slow-paced walking simulator style horror games, then you're really not going to like this. You won't be having monsters jumping out all over the shop. That's kind of what they did with the sequel actually, and that's why Glen didn't enjoy the sequel as much. But yeah, we both really enjoyed this. It's 85% off down to £2.69, but be warned, if you're easily spooked, yeah, it might get you. So there we have it. Cue the Christmas music. It's time for the Christmas pudding selection. First, we have The Takeover at just £2.69, 85% off. This is a classic side-scrolling beat-em-up inspired by the 90s favourites that you used to play at Butlins, slamming your 20p's into the machine, losing way too quickly, busting out a bit of Time Crisis, and then wasting a load of time on those 2p machines. You know, the ones where you put it in and it like pushes it out. You win a little bit, then you lose a lot, then you win a bit more. This one has 1 or 2 player co-op. It's just over 2 gigs, and it does what it says on the tin. Then you've got Pillars of the Earth, Ken Follett's Pillars of the Earth. In the EU regions, we have a huge sale on all of the Daedalic games or Daedalic games at the moment. So Ken Follett's is down 90%, as we've seen a few times, but I'm sure there's still a couple of you that haven't picked it up. It's just over £1. It really is worth that, and it looks stunning. And finally, My Time at Porsche. I think it's the deluxe edition and standard editions are both 90% off. Very cheap prices for what, in my opinion, are actually, well, maybe it's hindsight, but they feel like they're better than the sequel just because the sequel's in such a bad state at the moment. But when this one first came out, it also was a bit of a mess. Had huge loading times and things. The loading times are still not perfect, but it's in much better nick than it once was. Now, as I said at the start of this series and this episode, our 12 days of SwitchUp starts next week, so do make sure your notifications are on. We don't want to be giving away things and then people don't get it, and it should be a really good time. Also, go check out the link to the other sales video if you missed that one, and a big thanks to all of you, to our Patreons, our members. Make sure you save yourself 10% if you're buying any of these games. Use code SwitchUp over at switchup.gg to buy your eShop credit. Okay, for all things Switch all the time, keep it Switch Up. Cheers, guys. See ya!